Utah's playoff hopes live after one of the games of the year.
You are Locked On College Football with Spencer McLaughlin, your daily podcast on all things college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On College Football. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you all so much for making this your first listen or your first view every day. It is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, the number one sports podcast network out there. Thank you all so much for making that happen. Oklahoma holds on. Georgia Tech committed. What Tom Haverford would say is an oh no. Oh no, Georgia Tech, but is all hope lost? I'll talk about that later on today's show, which is brought to you by our friends at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. So, the Big 12, if things continue on this trajectory, is a conference I will be advocating to probably get 3 teams into the college football playoff. That's not a guarantee. We'll see how things shake out. There's a world where it happens. It's entirely possible. The only reason it's currently possible is Utah just won one of the most incredible football games of the season. This was an old school Big 12 game. Utah, the defensively minded, driven, prideful Utes beat Kansas State 51-47. Kansas State, just these numbers are all real. They're all real. There was over 1,000 yards of offense in this game. Utah had well over 500. Kansas State had 574. The Wildcats ran at Rice-Eccles Stadium for 472 yards. Joe Jackson had 293 yards and 3 touchdowns. That's one more yard than Utah ran for as a team. Can you imagine going for 292 on the ground and getting outgained in that department by 180 yards? It happened. Oh, this game had everything. Kansas State scored 31 points in the first half. There wasn't a shortage of fans. There never is at Rice-Eccles. That student section, the must was rockin', and it didn't matter. They were quiet for large stretches of this game. They weren't quiet at the end. 51-47 is not a Utah score I thought I would ever see. One of my favorite television shows of all time, not just because it was shot near my hometown, was a show about a Robin Hood group of thieves. The show was on TNT called Leverage. And there is an episode where their normal grifter is out finding herself, and they have someone who's new to the team. And so she's trying to work her way into the fold, and they do a couple of jobs. And so they do this one job where they're helping out the main character's ex-wife, and their arch villain is someone they have to work with, and he gets credit for their work and doesn't get paid. And she's watching this unfold. And she goes, "We didn't even get paid," as he's getting all the credit and a promotion. And then she goes, "I hate this guy." And then one of the members of the crew gives her a cheers with the beer and says, "Now you're part of the team. Now, Utah, you're part of the Big 12. Now you understand what the conference is truly about. Utter and complete madness. 51-40. Is this Baylor TCU back in the day? Do you remember the Alamo Bowl between Washington and Baylor led by RG3? I do. I remember that. That's what this game was. But instead of a bunch of quarterback play, there was a bunch of running backs who just did whatever they wanted to. 12.2 yards a carry. There were one only had one carry. 2 running backs for Kansas State averaged over 12 yards a carry. I've never seen anything like it. BYU just went full Big 12. Or excuse me, I'm talking about them in a moment. Utah just went full Big 12. And guess what? It felt every bit as crazy, wild, and awesome with a mobile quarterback who can make special throws but isn't always as consistent It felt like I was watching Texas A&M come back against South Carolina. Not the same number of points, but stylistically, it had the same vibes. It was incredible. Absolutely incredible watch. I would love to see Utah in the playoff. I really would. Kyle Whittingham almost retired last year. I think if he'd beaten Utah, he would have gone out 6-6, won a bowl game, 7-6. All right, I'm good. He came back. That BYU loss, it's still sitting with him this year. Texas Tech loss, doesn't like losing at home. Wasn't going to let that happen again. That win shows me just how badly Kyle Whittingham wants to get in the playoff. I hope he gets there. It's an uphill battle. Because you lost to both Texas Tech and BYU. But overall, I would like to see Utah in the playoff. I think they'd be a really fun team. I think they'd be a great watch. I also happen to think they're a really good team. I'm not someone that wants to take credit away from Utah the way I'm sure some people will. I hope I will be in a bad mood if next week the committee drops Utah because Kansas State almost beat them. Because in the SEC, these are the games that showcase the depth of the conference. I don't want to see anything but Utah staying where they are at. So, unbelievable football game. The highest of vibes for Utah. That crowd was as loud as I've ever heard it, and it has been loud. I remember when Cam Rising went in against USC in 2022 to take the lead on a 2-point conversion. I think that was louder. That's how it came through my television anyway. So props to the Utes. Speaking of the Beehive State, BYU went on the road and won. This doesn't surprise me in the slightest. Does BYU have to win next week to get in the playoff? Probably, in the eyes of the committee. If they do win next week, they should not have to win the Big 12 championship game. They absolutely should not. For those of you that are in the camp of, well, it's not an upset if this team is favored and Vegas know all, and Vegas would, okay. BYU had a very good chance to lose this week. Talked about it on the show, and guess what? They went and controlled the game against Cincinnati. So since they lost to Texas Tech, you're giving so many teams a mulligan. The current playoff rankings are giving mulligans all over the place. And you know what? In the 12-team playoff, that's okay. That's okay. That's what it does. I'm not a fan of that aspect of it. This is still the greatest sport on planet Earth, don't get me wrong. But the teams that are being ranked ahead of Notre Dame right now include Alabama, who's getting a massive mulligan against Florida State, and Notre Dame, that lost twice earlier in the year, once to Miami, who the committee doesn't like a whole heck of a lot. They're just keeping them down. Like, the committee right now is just using Utah and BYU as a buffer between Notre Dame and Miami, and that's not the way my rankings look, but that's a story for another day. Alabama's really the biggest one here. BYU's got a better record. BYU's one loss is on the road to a top 5 team. Yeah, they got beat soundly. They should have been dropped. They were, but they were dropped way too far. And they do not have a loss on the resume that's as bad as Florida State by 14 points. Alabama does. Alabama's got plenty of good wins. I'm not saying the Crimson Tide are terrible. I'm just saying that BYU the last couple of weeks since that loss has won each of their games in comfortable fashion against good teams. TCU, not great, but good. Cincinnati, not great, but pretty darn good. Close to being a top 25 team. Cincinnati easily could have been ranked last week. They weren't able to get it done against Arizona, but BYU's just a better football team. Are they going to get any credit for that? Probably not. By the way, retroactively, how does that Arizona road win look for BYU? At the time, it was, BYU. Man, I tell you, that's barely beating Arizona. Well, Arizona looks like a solid team. Brent Brennan doing a really good job. So madness in the Big 12 just never goes away. Never goes away. This conference should get at least 2 teams in the playoff, and I would put 3 Big 12 teams into the playoff before I put in only 1. I hope it shakes out that way. We'll see if the committee sees the world the way that I do. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Hit me up on Twitter at @LockedOn_CFB. Thoughts on Oklahoma? They won. Good win. It's good. Bo Prabhu, I'll talk about that. And we could have a Big Ten job come open. First, this episode brought to you by our friends at Game Time. College football is the greatest sport on planet Earth. If you want to go to a rivalry game next week, Game Time's the way to do it. The tailgates, the rivalries, the energy in the stands is why we love college football. You want to experience that in person, but you don't want to deal with endless queues, hidden fees, prices jumping at checkout. Game Time's the place to go. The app that gives the advantage back to fans. It's the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices with no surprise fees. What you see is what you pay. And I love that feature so very much. I cannot stand seeing a price being like, oh, okay, that's what I'm paying. And then it gets tagged on in the end. It's the worst. And Game Time says, no, we're not doing that. So take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. Oklahoma 17, Missouri 6. I mean, it wasn't pretty, but it's a win. Oklahoma scored both of its touchdowns in the second quarter. Long pass to Isaiah Satania, 87 yards, and then a touchdown off a short field created by defense and special teams. Where have I heard that before with the Oklahoma Sooners? So I told you going into this game that Missouri's defense does not get enough credit. That was very much the case. And early on, it felt like Missouri might be poised for an upset in this spot. Didn't wind up coming to fruition because they, didn't score a touchdown and didn't register a point in the second half. Brent Venables' defense is very good. If Oklahoma wins next week when they take on, wait for it, they've got LSU, who almost lost to Western Kentucky. That's a thing that almost happened. LSU beat Western Kentucky 13-10. Explain that one, SEC homers. So the Sooners beat Missouri 17-6, and if they beat LSU next week, there will be no questions, no ifs, ands, buts, nothing. You will not hear a peep from me about Oklahoma going to the playoff because they should absolutely be in. If they lose next week, you will hear me come on the show and tell you that I don't want to see Oklahoma anywhere near the college football playoff. So it's a play-in game for the Sooners, which is exciting. I love regular season play-in games. It's what has always made college football different from every other sport. Now, here's my concern. Does Missouri have a good defense? Yes, they do. Oregon has good defense, and USC scored a lot of points. They couldn't stop the Ducks, and I'll have thoughts on that tomorrow. But the inability for Oklahoma's offense to help out the team, I'm not picking this team to make a long playoff run. And I know defense wins championships, but man, John Mateer ran the ball 18 times. That's more than the rest of the Sooners team combined. He only totaled 60 yards. The inability of Oklahoma to have an offensive line, kind of mind-boggling when you consider that this is Brent Venables' fourth season. It doesn't totally compute that they're this bad up front relative to what their potential is, or that they just have no ability to run the ball just a little. It doesn't have to be a lot, but this offense is straight up bad. It's a tough watch. It doesn't look like there is a lot of flow. It doesn't look like there's a cohesive execution of the game plan. I don't see anything about the Oklahoma offense I like. Here's something that I will make a prediction on right now. And I would, well, I was about to say I'd bet a lot of money that this would happen, but trust my bets was college football. Not a good idea. Fading them, a very good idea. Anyway, if Oklahoma beats LSU and goes to the playoff, in that first playoff game, I bet Oklahoma runs John Mateer about as much as they did in this game, maybe more. I think you could see the Sooners offense turn into some variation of Georgia Tech with Haynes King, where they just run the entire system through the quarterback in the air and on the ground. But he does not have receivers that can help him out. USC against Oregon, they they were the second best team on the field, but they had a chance to win despite sloppy play on both sides and questionable officiating. USC can throw the ball to receivers and they'll go help their quarterback out make a play. Isaiah Satania was schemed to be open. Now he's a great player. He's really fast. But coming out of this win, and I get on the paper for the committee, it's a ranked win for Oklahoma. I don't view it that way because I didn't rank Missouri in my top 25 coming into this week. I considered them, but I didn't put them in there. On my fan mood assessment here, this is a no vibes outcome for Oklahoma because I'm just seeing the same problem and limitation. It's going to beat them at some point. Yes, their defense and special teams are top tier, which is why they're in this position. They have made it to this point to control their own fate to the playoff in spite of the offensive struggles, not because of what the offense has brought to the table. So yes, I can trust the Oklahoma defense and their special teams to do a lot of good things for the team and give them a chance to win no matter who their opponent is. I'm not questioning that. This is not a national championship caliber team or one that I think is dangerous and could get hot because John Mateer, it feels on a weekly basis, I'm going to pull up the numbers real quick, he feels more likely to throw for less than 200 yards than over in any given game, and it doesn't really matter what the game is. Since SEC play began, here are his passing totals. 271. That was against Auburn. That's his most in an SEC game. 202. Completed 53% of his passes with 3 picks against Texas. That was a mess. 150, 223, 159, 138, 173. I love Oklahoma's defense. If they play anything other than darn near perfect football, Oklahoma is not going to win the game. I just do not have any faith that they're going to be able to do that. The Sooners defense has to do so much to help Oklahoma win. So much. It's not just that they're a defensively led team. There is no ability, none, for this offense to carry you to a win. It does not exist. I might be too negative at the moment about Oklahoma, but I'm just watching this team play every week and going, man, their resume is impressive, and gosh, that defense is so good in so many ways. They gave up 70 yards on the ground to Missouri, went for 325 last week against Mississippi State, who admittedly is terrible on defense. But man, their run defense, they picked off Bo Pribula twice. This is a good, solid win for Oklahoma, but I just don't see the ceiling. I don't see the upward potential yet. Long term, sure, but they got to fix the offense. They really do. So wanted to share thoughts on that. And then also, I want to pivot to the Big Ten. This is not going to be a storyline until it becomes a big storyline, but I think it should be on your radar. Jonathan Smith has not won a Big Ten game this year at Michigan State. He is in year 2. There was plenty of reasonable expectation in East Lansing that progress would at least show up, and their only Power 4 victory is over the worst Power 4 team in the country, and that's Boston College. Boston College is truly terrible. Michigan State at home needed, I think it was double overtime to beat the Eagles. And they have not won a Big Ten yet. They almost pulled off what was looking like a surprising upset. They were 16.5-point road dogs against Iowa, and they wound up losing the game by 3 points. I think that Michigan State job could come open in the next few weeks. I don't think that's ridiculous whatsoever. I don't think it'd be absurd. You're going so far back. Michigan State was 1 win from bowl eligibility last year. But they're just finding ways to lose, and they're not competitive. It's one thing when you're Scott Frost at Nebraska, which is a pretty famous example at this point, where you're just losing close over and over, and eventually it wears on the program and drags you down. Michigan State isn't consistently losing close. They're capable of it We see it happen. They almost beat Minnesota. They almost beat Iowa, but they can also get trounced by UCLA on their home field. They can also get waxed by any other team in the Big Ten. It's going wrong. And I don't think anyone's talking about it because the coaching carousel has such utter madness right now. I get it. I would keep an eye on Michigan State. I think that job could absolutely come open in this cycle. I mean, why not? Why not, right? And then would he go back to Oregon State? Probably not. I don't think that job's going to be open much longer. That's just a sense that I have. So let's talk about an oh no, Georgia Tech. First, this episode brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. Keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. So, remember that bounce back week that I talked about for my best bets? It went so poorly, so very poorly. Missed North Carolina by a half point. Vegas, very good, very good. Everything else just another 1-5. Since I fought back to get over 500, 2-10 the last 2 weeks. Start fading the picks, guys. You make money. FanDuel's the place to do it. Right now, FanDuel's giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. On my fan mood assessment, the highest of vibes for Pitt, the worst of vibes for Georgia Tech. The Yellowjackets had to win this game, and they'd make the ACC championship with a chance for a win regardless of what happens against Georgia next week. Did the Yellowjackets get caught looking ahead, or did Pitt go to Atlanta and expose the part of Georgia Tech that's almost bitten them this year in a couple of other games in addition to the one they lost? Mason Heinschel went 20-27 for 226 and 2 scores. And you know what? Pat Narduzzi messed up last week against Notre Dame. Didn't have his team ready to go because he gave them an excuse at the beginning of the week. He also had them ready for this game because he told them before that Notre Dame game, hey, it's the ACC games that matter. Well, guess what? The Pitt Panthers, you wonder why I'm against auto bids. The Pitt Panthers are playing for the right to go to the ACC championship game next week when they take on Miami. That is a colossally huge college football game. I can't wait for it. It's going to be really fun. Miami will be playing their 7th straight ACC game. And if they win, their at-large playoff hopes will be alive. I will lobby for them to get in over Notre Dame at 10-2. They're either both in or they're both out, or Miami's in and Notre Dame's out. In no world will I be okay with Notre Dame getting in with Miami missing the playoff. But let's cross that bridge if we get to it, because Pitt went into Atlanta and just derailed Georgia Tech, whose defense has not been great. They gave up 42 on their home field. Pitt scored a touchdown in every quarter, including 3 in the first, and they ran for 186 yards as a team. Take away sacks, it was over 200 as a squad. Haynes King did what he could, but he had to throw the ball 41 times. He ran it 20, but that's not how Georgia Tech is wired. They went for 121 on the ground. Why? Not because they couldn't run the ball. They weren't running it as efficiently as they normally do, but because they had to throw. They did not get on schedule offensively. Defensively, they couldn't get any stops, and Pitt just went up and down the field. 21-0 was the score at the end of the first quarter. That was not the most ridiculous first quarter score involving an ACC team on this day, but that's one I'll talk about on tomorrow's show. But Georgia Tech is now in a spot where they play Georgia next week. And by the way, Pitt's 8-3. Even though they have a bad loss to West Virginia, they went on the road, beat number 16 Georgia Tech. They'll be in my top 25 next week. Will they be in the committees? In all likelihood, yes, and they should be. because they earned it with this game. What do you do with Georgia Tech? Committee had them at 16. Are you telling me that 10-2 with a win over Georgia won't get you into the college football playoff? That'd be some mad disrespect to the ACC, and maybe they earn that, having the worst of the non-conference slates amongst the Power 4 leagues. But Georgia Tech had everything in front of them. This is Haynes King's last year. We'll see what they do at quarterback next season, because you have to have a certain kind of guy to play in that offense for Brent Key and Buster Faulkner, the offensive coordinator. But it was all there. This felt like it was the magical season, and it just came crashing down because you lost on senior day. Nothing feels worse than that. I mean, maybe Cal feels worse right now. Because dude. Speaking of jobs that need to come open that somehow involve the old Pac-12, RIP, will this be the moment? Cal's bowl eligible, so probably not. Will this be the moment Justin Wilcox is let go? Probably not. I mean, Ron Rivera's got to take a serious look, right? If you don't know, in the big game, Stanford, with an interim head coach, with, I don't even know on the roster, they did bring in transfers finally. They beat Cal 31-10, 14-10 at the half. Stanford goes 17-0 in the second half of the football game. And Cal, who was favored in the matchup on the road, loses outright by 21. You got smacked by Stanford, who's throwing the season away. Andrew Luck basically declared this season or a throwaway, a reset, a start of a rebuild. When he said, yeah, we're going to get rid of Troy Taylor, whether he thinks that's legitimate or not, and we're going to bring in my old buddy Frank Reich to just be a placeholder interim head coach. Maybe he's going to get the full-time job after this. I don't know. I don't think that's the best that Stanford could possibly do. But boy, it doesn't feel like the worst option at the moment when you won this game. Rivalries in college football, man. Rivalries in college football. And Justin Wilcox's ability to play down to the level of his opponent and play up to it is unlike anything I've seen. I mean, he should be an honorary Avenger because he has got a superpower. And that's exactly what it is. He's done it for so long, and the question will be what a lot of the national discourse, for however much there is, a lot of that national discourse you hear with the program amongst fans, I think a lot, is, well, do they even care? If they care, this is the sort of game you fire Justin Wilcox after. It's not going forward. You have got a superstar in the making at quarterback who had to throw the ball over 45 times in this one. Why? Because the rest of the team around him isn't good enough. But if you come back next year as Cal, and your pitch to Jaren Kiave Sangapolotele is, well, we're going to be better this year. Justin Wilcox been saying that to the fans in Berkeley, which there are, by the way, for 8-9 years at this point. It's not better. We know what he is. This is one of the worst of vibes in Berkeley, the best of vibes in Palo Alto. That's the easiest fan mood assessment for me of the week. I mean, holy smokes. 31-10 against a rebuilding, resetting Stanford program. That's embarrassing, man. That is an embarrassing loss for that program. So maybe they're feeling worse than Georgia Tech. But just think about this. I want to circle back to the Yellowjackets for a moment. If they were to beat Georgia next week, that's an if. There is no given. If they lose, they're out. No questions asked. But of all the teams, of that multi-car pileup of squads that could be at 10-2, if Georgia Tech wins the head-to-head with Georgia, can you really keep them out of the playoff? Is the committee going to do that? I think they would. I think they're going to drop Georgia Tech down outside of the top 20, which is ridiculous, but whatever. they're going to drop them out of the top 20. And then if they win next week, they'll get back inside the top 15. And, they just missed out. They'll do to Georgia Tech what happened to BYU last year. BYU was 10-2 with a road win against a playoff team. And they barely were discussed as a potential at-large candidate. I think there's a much greater than 50% chance, not 100, but a greater than 50% chance Georgia Tech at home played themselves out of a bid to the college football playoff today. Tough times for the Yellowjackets. Bright future, but this has to feel pretty bad. Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time. Until then, hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day.